The vase exploded against the wall, shards of turquoise and crimson porcelain raining down like shrapnel. My heart pounded as I stared at the jagged pieces strewn across the hardwood floor, the last intact link to my beloved grandmother, now destroyed by my own husband's rage. "Look what you made me do!" Trent roared, his face flushed crimson. He stabbed a finger towards my pregnant belly. "If you weren't so goddamn useless around here, I wouldn't have to act like this." My throat tightened as tears welled in my eyes. I'd walked on eggshells for years to avoid provoking his terrifying outbursts, his cruel put-downs chipping away at my self-worth. But this cruel act crossed a line. "That vase was all I had left of Grandma," I whispered, cradling my stomach protectively. "How could you?" Trent scoffed, swiping a half-empty beer bottle from the coffee table. "Don't give me that sad story. You spend more time moping over the past than taking care of me and this household." My cheeks flushed with anger. While he came home blind drunk most nights after blowing off work, I single-handedly ran my online vintage clothing business that paid most of our bills. Not that he'd ever appreciated my efforts. "I do everything for us." The words burst from my lips before I could stop them. Trent's eyes narrowed to slits as he took a hulking step forward. "What did you say to me?" I shrank back, my breath catching in my throat as his meaty fist clenched by his side. In that moment, a voice inside me screamed to get out before he seriously hurt me, or worse, my unborn child. After 7 years of torment, I couldn't endure this any longer. "And nothing," I stammered, shrinking into myself. "I'm sorry." He grunted and brushed past me towards the kitchen, mercifully leaving me alone with the shattered remains of my grandmother's prized possession. I crouched beside the rubble of porcelain shards, gingerly collecting the pieces into my trembling hands. As I cradled the broken vase, a shocking clarity washed over me. This was no way to bring a child into the world, living under the monster's roof, fearing his every mood. If he could destroy what little family legacy I had left, he could just as easily take away my baby. Trent's muffled curses drifted from the kitchen. I knew I had a small window of time before his wrath inevitably reignited. Clutching the shards to my chest, I retreated to our bedroom and began stuffing clothes into an overnight bag with my free hand. For too long, Trent's abuse had chipped away at my self-respect, little by little. He'd isolated me from friends and family, feeding me streams of cruel lies about how worthless I was until I believed them. But this sudden, violent act had been a brutal wake-up call. I had to get out, if not for my own sake, for the fragile life growing inside me. But I needed a plan to take him down once and for all. As I finished packing, rage and determination burned within me like a dormant flame being stoked to life. No more tiptoeing around Trent's instability. It was time to fight back. After packing my bag, I rushed out to my car and drove numbly to Jenna's place. My best friend since childhood, she was the only person I could trust with the truth about Trent's twisted, violent behavior. Jenna opened the door and immediately enveloped me in a fierce hug. "Oh my God, Riss, what happened?" Her eyes widened as she took in my ashen face. I took a steadying breath to fight back tears. He shattered Grandma's vase in a drunken rage, called me useless, got in my face like he was going to hit me again. Fury flickered across Jenna's face. She'd seen the fading bruises before when I made up excuses, but this was a new low. "That evil son of a bitch. You can't go back there. Not with the baby coming." Nodding numbly, I followed her inside to the living room and recounted the horrific incident in halting sentences. By the time I finished, angry tears streaked Jenna's cheeks. "He can't keep doing this to you," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to get you out for good. Get the cops involved if we have to." "No police," I said quickly, my stomach twisting. "That could put the baby at risk if Trent retaliates." Jenna opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. She set her jaw in a stubborn line. "Okay, we'll figure out a way to take that bastard down ourselves. Do it legally." Her decisive confidence was a balm to my rattled nerves. I felt the first stirrings of hope that there could be a way out of this nightmare. But I needed ammunition, evidence of Trent's abuse and infidelity to ensure the courts granted me full custody. "I should snoop around the house while he's at work," I said, my mind already spinning with what I might find. "There's got to be proof of his affairs, or inappropriate texts or emails at the very least." A jagged smirk curved Jenna's lips. Girl, you leave the digital recon to me. I have ways of getting into encrypted files and burner phones to see what filthy secrets your lying sack of crap husband has been hiding. I arched a brow, but didn't inquire further. The less I knew about Jenna's shadier skills, the better. All I cared about was nailing Trent to the wall so he could never hurt my child or me again. Over the next few days, I returned to our house while Trent was at work to scour for any evidence of infidelity and his increasingly erratic behavior. What I found was much worse. Trent had been stealing funds from his construction company's operations budget and funneling the money into shady offshore accounts. The paper trail of emails and bank transfers implicated him in a massive embezzlement scheme going back over a year. I compiled everything into a meticulous file of evidence, both of his criminal activities and sordid affairs with multiple women. My hands shook with gratitude that Jenna had cracked the passwords on his laptop and encrypted messages. God only knew what he might have done if I'd stumbled upon this information on my own. When I showed Jenna the shocking file, her jaw went slack. Holy shit, Riss. This is bigger than I thought. This asshole could go to jail if we play our cards right. Her eyes glinted with vindictive excitement. He's not just cheating scum. He's a full-blown criminal who'd steal from his own family if he had the chance. We can bury this bastard for good. I took a deep breath, resolve settling over me like a shroud. Trent deserved to lose everything. His job, his money, his freedom. Just like he'd taken away my sense of safety and self-worth. Good, I said, my voice hardening. It's time he paid for what he's done to me. To us. I want him to burn. With clenched fists and narrowed eyes, Jenna nodded in fierce solidarity. Whatever it takes, girl. Let's get that evil prick. With the damning evidence of Trent's betrayals and criminal activities compiled, I knew I needed to get my brother Kyle involved. As furious as Jenna was over how Trent had treated me, Kyle would be absolutely nuclear when he found out. He'd been fiercely protective of me ever since we were kids. I met Kyle at a quiet diner downtown, my hands trembling as I clutched the file folder. He instantly knew something was very wrong when he saw the look on my face. Riss? What's going on? Kyle demanded, sliding into the booth across from me. Is it that prick husband of yours again? Wordlessly, I pushed the file across the table. Kyle's brows furrowed as he flipped through the pages, his expression morphing from confusion to thunderous rage. That lying, cheating sack of shit! He exploded, slamming his hand down on the table hard enough to rattle the salt and pepper shakers. Heads turned from other tables as Kyle struggled to rein in his booming voice. Trent's been stealing from his company, sleeping around with God knows how many women. And just look at the things he's called you. Kyle shook his head in disgusted disbelief as he read the transcripts of Trent's vile, degrading texts and emails. I'll fucking kill him for talking to you like that. Believe me, I want to make him pay too, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. But we have to be smart about this. With the baby coming, I can't risk any crazy confrontations or him lashing out. Kyle's jaw tensed mulishly, but he seemed to realize the truth in my words. Yeah, you're right. We need to keep our heads and take this scumbag down legally. He straightened in his seat, features settling into an intense, focused expression. Let's run through everything. Leave no stone unturned to bury this jackass once and for all. For the next 2 hours, Kyle pored over Trent's transgressions, from the salacious texts to his female co-workers, all the way to the complex embezzlement paperwork. By the time the diner closed down around us, we had formulated a decisive plan of attack. First, we would anonymously turn over the embezzlement documents to Trent's employers, the Newton Construction Corporation. They would undoubtedly fire him on the spot and likely press criminal charges. Getting him locked up would be a major step towards getting him out of my life permanently. As for his affairs, one of his mistresses stood out as perhaps our most dangerous wild card, Clara Thompson, a 34-year-old woman who worked alongside Trent at Newton. From her messages, it was clear she was completely unaware Trent was married with a baby on the way. This chick is going to be nuclear when she finds out the truth, Kyle said grimly. She's not just some dumb side piece. This cow seriously thinks Trent loves her. I nodded, feeling a pang of surprising empathy for a woman I'd never met. She was being lied to and manipulated just as thoroughly as I had been, if not more so. When Clara finds out he's a lying, cheating deadbeat, we can turn her anger towards our cause, I said. Maybe she'll even help bring him down from the inside and get him fired. Kyle smirked darkly. I like the way you think, sis. Let's hit this asshole from every angle until he has nowhere left to run. A fierce smile tugged at my own lips. With Jenna's covert skills, Kyle's tactical mind, and my driving need to protect my child, we were an undeniable force. For the first time in our messed-up marriage, I finally felt like I had the upper hand over Trent. My smile widened as I looked my brother in the eye, newfound determination blazing within me. It's time to make him pay. With our plan to take down Trent firmly in place, I had to gear up and play the role of the dutiful, oblivious wife for a little while longer. It made me sick having to pretend everything was normal around that lying, abusive monster, but it was a necessary evil to protect myself and the baby while gathering further evidence. The next few weeks were a tense exercise in deception. During the days while Trent was at work, I scoured our home looking for any additional proof of his misdeeds, phone records, receipts, burner phones, anything that could be used against him. At night, when he came home, I put on a saccharine front, greeting him with a bright smile and making his dinner like the subservient little wife he demanded, all while fighting back revulsion whenever he leered at my pregnant belly and tried to paw at me. "Looking good, baby," he leered one evening after polishing off his meal. His beady eyes raked over my body lecherously. "Why don't you come keep Daddy company? Been a while since we've had some fun." I very nearly vomited at his crude come-on. Just a couple months ago, his words would have sent me into a panic, terrified of refusing his revolting demands. Now, they only stoked the raging fury simmering inside me. "Actually, I'm feeling pretty tired tonight," I lied in a sugary tone, fighting to keep the pure disgust off my face. "Carrying the baby around is really taking it out of me." Trent harumphed in disappointment, draining the last of his beer. "You haven't been pulling your weight lately. Once you drop that kid, things had better change around here." He jabbed his finger towards my belly. "I'm the fucking man of this house, got it?" I bit back the torrent of venom I desperately wanted to unleash. As enraged as I was over his piggish words, I couldn't give him any hint that I was onto his despicable secrets. Not until the kill shot was lined up. "Of course, baby," I simpered, pasting on a warm smile that turned my stomach. "I know you work so hard for us. I'll make it up to you soon, I promise." Trent grunted in approval and lumbered off to the living room, his foul stench lingering in his wake like a toxic smog. The second he was out of sight, the fake smile melted off my face, replaced by a look of pure revulsion. That was how most nights went over the following weeks. I walked a tightrope of deception, playing at being the dutiful little woman so Trent wouldn't become suspicious. Though every saccharine word and fake laugh made my skin crawl, it would all be worth it soon. In the meantime, Jenna and Kyle worked their technological and legal magic. They meticulously compiled all the communications and embezzlement documents into an ironclad case of evidence that would bury Trent so deep he'd never be able to slither back out. With each new incriminating file or email my allies unearthed, my own fire burned hotter. I felt energized thinking about shoving it all in Trent's smug face when the trap was finally sprung. To see the cocky bluster drain out of him when he realized his kingdom of lies had come crashing down around him. On a few particularly charged nights, the cruel, demeaning words he spat at me nearly broke my carefully crafted facade. Like when he berated me in the kitchen for a minor mess I'd made cooking his dinner, calling me a fat, useless, knocked-up bitch who couldn't do anything right. Those were the nights I had to excuse myself and blast heavy metal music from my headphones, allowing the pounding bass to drown out my seething, impotent fury. Knowing that soon, so very soon, Trent would face the ultimate reckoning gave me the strength to endure his verbal lashings. In those heated moments, I drew vicious satisfaction by picturing the day when he would be the one cowering and afraid of my wrath. After weeks of playing the role of Trent's dutiful little wife while amassing ammunition against him, the time had finally come to set the trap. My anger had been simmering to a boil, and I could barely contain the urge to scream the ugly truth in his smug face. But Jenna and Kyle kept reminding me to hold my rage in check a little longer, to let Trent stumble blindly into our carefully constructed snare so we could bury the bastard once and for all. Just a couple more days of sucking it up, and that asshole will get what's coming to him, Jenna assured me over the phone while coordinating the final preparations. We've got him by the short and curlies. I forced myself to nod tersely, rubbing my pregnant belly. For the sake of my unborn child, I had to stay the course, no matter how much bile rose in my throat every time I was near Trent. Knowing his world was about to come crashing down kept me going. The night before the grand finale, Trent was at his most arrogant and repulsive. Over a dinner I had prepared to keep up appearances, he bragged openly about his latest scam at Newton Construction to divert funds into his private offshore accounts. "Those idiots don't even know what's happening," he sneered, spearing a hunk of steak with his fork. "Just like they don't realize what a lazy, ungrateful wife they stuck me with." My hand clenched around my utensils until my knuckles turned white, nails biting into the palms of my hands to keep from screaming. To watch this vile, abusive monster flaunt his criminal actions so brazenly made my blood boil. After finishing his meal in self-satisfied silence, Trent tossed his napkin on the plate and stood abruptly. "I'm heading out to the bar for a drink with the boys," he said gruffly. "Have this kitchen spotless by the time I get back, or you'll be sorry." He aimed a cruel look at my pregnant belly, and I felt an involuntary shudder rip through me as the unspoken threat hung in the air. Even on the precipice of his downfall, he was eager to torment me one last time. But I steeled myself as Trent's footsteps faded from the house, keeping my expression neutral. Let him have his meaningless power trip. I knew who really held the cards. The second I heard his truck engine fire up and pull out of the driveway, I was on the phone with Jenna. "He's gone," I rasped, pouring every ounce of pent-up venom into those 2 words. "Initiate the plan." From there, everything Jenna, Kyle, and I had orchestrated over the past few weeks kicked into motion like a well-oiled machine of vengeance and justice. First, the compiled file of evidence detailing Trent's massive embezzlement scheme at Newton Construction was anonymously routed to the company's corporate oversight committee. Within the hour, an urgent board of directors meeting had been called for the following morning to investigate the bombshell accusations. Next, every shred of proof documenting Trent's myriad affairs and inappropriate relationships with female coworkers was forwarded directly to Clara Thompson, the mistress who seemed most committed to Trent's web of lies. She was the one most primed for an explosive reaction, believing their illicit romance was the real deal. A devious smirk tugged at my lips as I received confirmation that all the incendiary evidence had been sent. I could already picture the cataclysmic detonation that was about to rock Trent's pathetic world, all while he was blissfully unaware at some seedy dive bar throwing back beers with his idiot buddies. I savored the thought as my phone chimed with a new message from Kyle, 3 simple words that made my heart race with vicious glee. "It's go time." From the kitchen, the sound of Trent's truck pulling into the driveway filtered in through the cracked window. My blood thrummed with adrenaline, merging into a chaotic blend of excitement and dread. Because when Trent walked through that door in a few minutes, his life would be irrevocably shattered. And there was nowhere on earth for the bastard to run. I was sitting on the couch trying to watch TV when Trent's truck rumbled into the driveway, but my heart was pounding too loudly to focus. This was it, the moment of reckoning we had meticulously staged to take down his abusive, criminal empire of lies. The front door banged open, and Trent's heavy footsteps approached, reeking of stale beer and bad decisions. He flopped onto the recliner, bleary-eyed and oblivious to the bombshell that was about to detonate in his booze-addled face. I watched him surreptitiously from the couch, my mouth set in a grim line. He looked just as revolting as ever, and soon that smug, entitled facade was about to disintegrate. Trent's phone rang, shattering the tense silence. He squinted at the screen before barking a gruff, "Yeah," into the receiver. Immediately, his brows furrowed in confusion at whatever he was hearing on the other end. He sat up straighter in the recliner, eyes widening. "Wait, slow down," he snapped, all bravado. "What are you talking about?" I tensed, readying myself as Trent's expression shifted from blustering to pale shock. Whatever bombshell had landed clearly wasn't computing in his thick skull. "No, that's bullshit! Complete lies!" he roared, surging to his feet. I noticed a thin sheen of nervous sweat beading on his forehead. Trent turned away from me and began pacing the living room, one hand clutching the phone, while the other reflexively dragged through his greasy hair. "How could you even?" he sputtered. "This has to be some kind of mistake." His face reddened to an alarming shade as he raised his voice to an apoplectic shout. "Who's making these goddamn accusations? I'll fucking bury them for this." I couldn't suppress a tiny smirk of vicious satisfaction watching him slowly come undone. After months of carefully planning his downfall, it felt surreal yet glorious to witness his pathetic, mental unraveling in real time. My pulse thundered with vindictive glee. The one-sided diatribe went on for several more minutes, Trent intermittently shouting denials and attempting to bully whoever was on the line. All the while, his complexion took on an increasingly green pallor, until finally he turned away from me, bowed his head and mumbled two words that I had longed to hear. "I quit." He ended the call with a vicious stab of his finger, chest heaving. For a stunned moment he simply stood there, fists clenched at his sides. Then Trent whirled toward me, spittle flecking from his contorted mouth as he bellowed in raw fury. "You bitch! What did you do?" Wiping the satisfied smirk from my face, I looked up at him with feigned innocence. "Me? I didn't do anything. Why would you think that? Don't play dumb with me," he raged, stalking towards the couch with hands splayed like claws. "That was the asshole oversight committee at Newton. They have evidence that I've been stealing from them." He loomed over me now, his putrid booze breath hot and sour on my face. I recoiled inwardly, fighting to keep my expression blank. "Along with a file full of messages and pictures proving I've been cheating with half the goddamn office. So don't lie to me, you treacherous snake. This has got your slimy fingerprints all over it." Meeting Trent's murderous glare head-on, I allowed myself a saccharine smile. Reaching for the remote, I unmuted the TV to reveal a breaking news story about a high-level embezzlement scandal at Newton Construction. "You brought this on yourself, asshole," I hissed, maintaining eye contact as Trent watched his scowling mugshot flash across the screen. "Your reign of terror is over." Trent gaped, speechless and twitching as the damning details aired one by one. The massive cover-up he'd tried to spin crashed down harder than any of us could have imagined. His decade-long career and reputation were going up in smoke before his very eyes. As his legs slowly buckled beneath him, I basked in the look of abject despair that crumbled his brutish features. Never again would this wretched excuse for a man be able to abuse me and my child. The shackles of fear and oppression had finally been obliterated. Now the real fun could begin. The evening news was just the start of Trent's spectacular downfall. Over the next few days, his world utterly imploded in a manner more brutal than I could have ever imagined. But I savored every agonizing moment. First came the deluge of media scrutiny as details of massive embezzlement scheme at Newton Construction saturated the airwaves and internet. Once a respected figure in the industry, he was now the poster boy for corporate greed and deceit. Reporter vans camped outside our home around the clock, hungry for any hint of the disgraced man behind the headlines. I spent most of my time hidden away to avoid them, but enjoyed a wicked thrill watching Trent slink out in a baseball cap and dark shades like a fugitive, pelted with insults and microphones. "How could you rip off your own employees like that?" One brazen journalist shouted as Trent tried to hustle to his truck. "Where did all the stolen money go?" "Scumbag crook," another hollered. "Guys like you are what's wrong with this country." I chuckled darkly at the computer screen when Trent snapped, throwing a wild punch at the camera lens before peeling out of the driveway to a chorus of jeers. His humiliation was only just beginning. The final anarchy came crashing down when Clara Thompson, Trent's most serious mistress, decided to add her own gasoline to the raging inferno. Jilted after discovering his marriage and betrayals, she decided to make him pay in a very public, very painful way. I received a courtesy call from her lawyer detailing the vengeful lawsuit minutes before the news hit the blogosphere. Miss Thompson will be filing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Mr. Lee for malicious emotional damages resulting from his calculated deception, the snippy attorney informed me in a nasal drawl. Given the heinous nature of his promiscuous affairs and marital status, my client intends to pursue punitive penalties to the legal maximum. Your husband's reputation will be utterly destroyed. While the guy clearly wanted me to feel threatened on Trent's behalf, I had to resist laughing out loud. Trent had brought this entirely upon himself, and I would relish every agonizing moment as the walls closed in. I understand completely, I said, my voice sickly sweet while fighting back a grin. Please tell Miss Thompson I wish her the very best in her quest for justice. Less than an hour after that call, the salacious details of Clara's lawsuit started sweeping social media like a firestorm. The particulars of Trent's lurid texts, X-rated exchanges, and intimate promises he'd made to multiple women were dragged into the harsh light. Nothing was off limits or considered too private in Clara's merciless onslaught. Soon, new hashtags like Scarlet Lecher and Phony Romancer were trending nationwide as morbidly amused outsiders weighed in on the sordid drama. Damning screenshots and audio recordings surfaced of Trent bad-mouthing me in vile, depraved terms, quick to go viral as emblems of his true character. I watched in awe and morbid satisfaction as that runaway firestorm swallowed up what tattered remains of Trent's reputation and status still existed. With Clara's relentless crusade to crucify him on public display, he had become the most hated and mocked figure in America overnight. Through it all, Trent remained holed up in our home like a cowering rat, refusing to face the scorn and humiliation he'd brought upon himself. I ventured no pity for the sniveling coward, letting him choke on the fetid ashes of his bombed-out life. After firing off a furious text ordering me to put a stop to that insane bitch's lies, I simply responded with 3 words: "You deserve worse." Each time I saw another ruthless hashtag or scathing article eviscerating Trent's legacy and demonizing his behavior, I felt a vicious thrill. This was far beyond what I'd imagined when beginning our quest for revenge. In fact, it exceeded my darkest desires. As his credibility and livelihood burned to the ground in front of the whole world, I finally felt an upwelling of soaring relief. The nightmare was over at last, and I wouldn't shed a single tear for the sociopathic monster responsible for his own grisly undoing. Once the media firestorm over Trent's spectacular downfall began to die down, I could finally begin picking up the pieces and moving forward with my new life, a life free from his torment and abuse. I filed for an uncontested divorce, knowing Trent had no legal ground to fight me after the depths of his depraved behavior had been so ruthlessly exposed. The hefty settlement I received, funded by liquidating what remained of his decimated assets, would allow me to provide a safe and comfortable upbringing for my son when he arrived. Speaking of my son, my pregnancy was now full term and I prepared to give birth any day. My parents insisted I move back home with them temporarily until I was ready to get my own place. I hugged them fiercely when they came to help me pack up my things, overflowing with gratitude for their unconditional love and support. "We're so proud of your bravery through this whole nightmare," my mother said, eyes brimming with tears as she gently rubbed my swollen belly. "Your grandmother would have cheered seeing you persevere like this." My dad squeezed my hand, his gruff exterior cracking slightly with fatherly concern. "I just wish we'd stepped in sooner before letting that bastard terrorize you for so long. No man should ever lay a hand on a woman carrying his child like that." I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat, quickly blinking back grateful tears of my own. While nothing could undo the trauma and darkness of the past, I now had hope for a beautiful future with my son. During the move, Trent remained holed up in the bedroom, too ashamed and defeated to even show his face. When I passed by the door to the master suite, I could hear his gravelly voice muttering furious curses, occasionally punctuated by the muffled shattering of objects being flung against the wall. A tiny, vindictive part of me enjoyed listening to his tortured, impotent outbursts from the safety of the hallway. The once arrogant, abusive monster now reduced to a caged, raging animal without an ounce of power over me or my child's lives. As I began loading up the last box of my belongings, I heard the bedroom door creak open behind me. Turning, I saw Trent emerge, his brutish features gaunt and shadowed from his self-imposed seclusion. His eyes widened slightly when he saw my pregnant belly, full and ready to burst. "Marissa," he rasped, voice cracking with what I assumed was either dehydration. I didn't care which. I made mistakes, serious ones. But you have to stop this insanity. That's my child, too. We can make this work." His words rang hollow, a feeble attempt to regain some sense of control over his rapidly disintegrating kingdom. I regarded him with pure apathy, unmoved by his pathetic pleading. "You brought this on yourself," I said, coldly echoing my declaration from the night everything fell apart. "When you decided to make my life a living hell rather than treating me with respect. When you cheated and stole to fuel your own sick desires at the expense of everyone around you." I pressed a hand to my belly, feeling my son kick insistently. "This baby deserves so much better than being raised by a worthless, abusive liar like you. He deserves to know what it means to be truly loved." Trent grimaced, face flushing purple with rage. For a fleeting moment I braced myself, haunted by instincts from his past outbursts of violence. But just as quickly, the bluster seeped out of him like a deflating balloon and he seemed to shrink in on himself. "You're right," he mumbled, head bowed in defeat as he turned away. "I'm a piece of garbage. Maybe it's best I just disappear for good." I watched Trent's hunched, pitiful form slink back into the bedroom before gathering the box in my arms. As I headed for the front door, I permitted myself a small, satisfied smile. For so many years, I had been shackled by fear and oppression, bowed by his forceful dominance. Now, finally, I could walk away from this place, unburdened and unafraid. No longer would Trent's cruelty and malice control my life. Inhaling the crisp spring air, I felt a surge of liberated euphoria. My son and I were going to be okay, safe, happy, and free to flourish without toxicity. It was a bright new morning, and I had survived Trent's long night of terror. Bruised but unbroken, I stepped forward to greet the future I deserved, with my head held high.